Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this week's blockchain gaming news roundup with blockchaingamer.biz and GamesTX. I'm Jenny Jordan, and with me is John Jordan, who has been down to London this week. What have you been doing in London this week?
Oh, down the big smoke. Oh, yeah. Yes. So there's a. So actually, this week has been London Blockchain Week. Lots of people have sort of career blockchain week and all this sort of stuff. So London one is, and I guess it's sort of over time, this sort of way you expect it to go with London is, London is known, sort of, if it's known for one thing, it's known for like being an international sort of finance centre. So I think, in previous years, there probably would have been more game stuff in London Blockchain Week. But looking at the sort of various events, it was very much been sort of, bankers and stable coins and all that sort of stuff. And the particular show I went to was called Zebu Live. There were a lot of these sort of things. There's an overall sort of organisation that says we're going to do London Blockchain Week, and then there's sort of events happen as part of that. So it was a 2-day event happening as sort of part of that. And again, I think I did check. It was a 2-day event, and it was sort of not the largest event, and probably been bigger in previous years. And sort of a typical sort of conference, mainly panels, I think, rather than sort of talks. Although they did have Nigel Farage, potentially our next Prime Minister in a few years' time. Actually, he's got a big crypto thing going on there. So some of his advisors are into sort of crypto. I don't think he's ever used a self-custody wallet, but there we go. What do I know? But there was this sort of panel on the first day, actually, quite early, about blockchain games. And I actually had a few of us actually had proposed like a talk about blockchain games, and I think they basically thought we're not going to have a talk about blockchain games, but we'll sort of put you all on a panel, and you can sort of have your talk on the panel. And actually, even in the event, there was again there wasn't many blockchain people there, but gaming people. But then Ronin had like a I don't know who organised it actually, but Ronin had like a gameplay area, small gameplay area in the sort of expo area, so you could play things like what do they have now? They had Cambria and Craftworld from Angry Dinos, and I think a few of them, Fableborn I think as well. So there's a few games there. Anyway, so I went down I was moderating the panel actually, and it was sort of interesting. It will flow into a few of the other things we're going to talk about. There was not like a massive amount of news this week, because I've been out for a couple of days, sort of not been really focused on news as much as normal, really. But it was interesting because the overall headline of the talk of the panel was sort of what's working now in Web3 gaming, which is actually quite a pertinent sort of question to be asking, and one sort of the last few weeks we've in various ways sort of discussed on this podcast, because that's there's been sort of quite a
thing we like to discuss. Yeah.
Well, no, but equally, I mean, sometimes it's just sort of news and people are sort of announcing this and doing that, but at the moment there's sort of two very sort of extreme bits of news, which is basically loads of people going we're shutting down or gone bust or sort of bad news sort of thing, and that's just because where we are in the cycle, people haven't been raising money, and then there's obviously the people who have done various pivots and the sort of trying to find what they call product market fit. They're going to run out of money, and or the process of running out of money makes good entrepreneurs really focus on how can we get our idea to work, sort of thing. So we're seeing sort of some of those as well. So it's interesting. Actually, the panelists, often you're on a panel and sort of that you have quite irrelevant panelists, but that what we were discussing, it was quite good actually. So we had Koko she's head of growth, I think, at she's definitely Goat Gaming, Mighty Bear Games, but I can't remember her exact title, something like head of growth. And as she discussed, and as we have discussed on this podcast, Mighty Bear Games sort of started out very much as a game developer making Web3 games with NFTs and going to do a token, and now it has ended up with a very different thing called, I never get it right, it's grab gifts. Which one is it? Grab gifts, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, and it's sort of this sort of gacha box thing where you sort of you turn up and basically like sort of a bit like bingo, sort of toss a coin, and you pay your money, and you basically probably don't win as much as you put in, may win something, so half of your money back, or you may get a massive big reward. Sort of a bit like very much like a lottery ticket. But that seems to be working for them. And also Russell Bennett from Metacade. Yeah. And it's sort of similar. I mean, not such a high-profile project, although we have covered it on the website. But very similar. That sort of looking around for how can we, they raised money 3 years ago. How can we survive? And they've ended up again with a. I'm not using it myself, but I think theirs is more of a sort of spin the wheel type thing. Sort of, they just says you want to get people to come in every day, just be part of the daily. Sort of come in. You have to. They have a token that's been live, so they say buy the spin with their token, and you get win various things. You probably don't win because that's the nature of lotteries. But not trying to make games, and really, I think what we talked about, sort of blockchain games or crypto gaming, where we are at the moment, at least for these products, is very much we've gone from blockchain games to crypto games, and within crypto games, you're basically really on the crypto side of it and focusing on the degens, and they basically want to risk something. They want to be degen-like. They want to sort of spend some money or buy some meme coins, but they're doing that because they want their 10x or something like that. So games have sort of condensed down into these very small, simple, but it could get a big reward sort of scenarios. So yeah, and I think that's I think there are other options, but I think that was sort of one of the big headlines, and that's something we've spoken about quite a lot recently. I think.
It just takes me back to the sort of early NFT market, which was very much like that.
Yeah,
and kind of how that is still the prevalent sort of theme of people in crypto. That's what they want, sort of thing. Anyway, yeah. So talking about kind of the sad side of the industry with lots of projects shutting down. So this week we wrote about Dragginz, the fully on-chain kind of game on ICP. Actually, sort of the only major game on ICP have any sort of attention. It's made by the Neopets co-creators, Donna Powell and Adam Powell. So maybe, if I don't know if it's to do with ICP hasn't really had much, it hasn't been talked about a lot, and clearly has not been a very prolific chain in terms of games at all. I don't know if it has to do anything with sort of why it's not. But yeah, I do hope that they can find funding and a way of sort of making it through. I was excited for that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting with them, as you say. I think when you go out on a really, I mean, lots of people, not lots of people, some people have really sort of high hopes for ICP, but it's done the typical thing where it did a big airdrop, and then the prices just sort of absolutely collapsed of the ICP token, and there's nothing really on. When you go to a new chain like that, there's just a whole bunch of stuff that's just not there because no one's building on it. So in terms of Dragginz, they decided they had to build this. They're building the team's still there. Some of the teams, so they're working on an NFT sort of platform creation, marketplace, and they sort of felt they needed that for their game because there wasn't those sort of primitive sort of features weren't available anywhere else. Whereas if you're on Ethereum, you've obviously got, if you want to use OpenSea or something like that, obviously you have tons of marketplaces. So they sort of felt, we've got to do this marketplace thing, and so they're working on that. It's not the team. The team hasn't stopped, but the people who were working on the sort of game, they've basically had to fire them effectively. But it's a controlled sort of process, I think, with Dragginz. So they've sort of the team are sort of finishing up their work in such a way that at some point they or someone else can come in and sort of rejuvenate the game. Obviously, that may not happen, but they're sort of like saying this is our passion project, and we will get it done. So and often, I think, we are seeing that a bit more now with the people, because funding's not around in the same way. But you don't sort of need funding for some of these projects. Obviously, if you're making a massive 3D shooter game, you sort of do. But for some blockchain projects, they can be at the scale now, and with AI and stuff, that people sort of could do them in their spare time. They have a 9-to-5 IT job, and then in the weekends they work on their blockchain project. I mean, that's not impossible. And obviously, lots of people making just broad games are sort of hobbyists, and they that's how that sort of stuff happens. So we'll sort of see with Dragginz. And it was interesting. I mean, I think it's an interesting project. Not because it was going to be a sort of great shakes game, but because when you've had a team who's built something like Neopets, and obviously they sold it years ago and stuff, they're not involved anymore, but they have clearly they've had experience of making experience that really resonates with people. And it's interesting when people like that choose to do blockchain, they're not doing it for funding. They're sort of creative types who hopefully to some degree understand what the novelty of blockchains can do. And those are the people who I think who will keep going. So yeah, that's in some ways the sort of the positive side of these sort of things. As long as you can sort of shut them down in a controlled manner.
Yeah. No, that's right. And talking of sort of trends in the industry, we did have the Mavens panel this week as well come together with some kind of views on what has been the major trend in 2025. I know 2025 is not over yet, but we are into quarter 4 now, so it is kind of time to start reflecting on what has been the biggest shift this year in Web3 games. So what was your takeaway from some of the contributors that are quite prominent names in the industry? We have CCP, and they're quite varied as well. If you look at CCP games, Hilma Vegas, compare it to like Gabby Dyson or Why Did You Play? It's sort of it's a wide span with very different strategies. So what's kind of takeaways from there?
Well, again, I mean, like all these sort of things, when you ask those sort of questions, people's answers are justified by what they're doing now. I mean, obviously, they don't suddenly we ask that question, suddenly go, what I was doing was totally wrong. It was, oh goodness, I never thought of it that way. So everyone obviously sort of justifies what they're already doing. But again, it sort of goes back to a little bit. I mean, on the panel I was doing at Zebu Live, because two of the three panelists, had gone through this process of sort of starting out with more traditional games, a more traditional game experience using blockchain, and ended up with these very focused sort of degen type projects. And as we just sort of discussed, that's sort of one part of the spectrum that clearly is working at the moment in terms of being able to attract, be able to generate sort of revenue. So, as you said on the Mavens thing, Gabby Dizon from YGG was on there, and again, as we argued, how sustainable something like LOL Land will be, we don't know. But they have done $5.5 million of revenue, and they've been buying back their token, and they're doing a whole publishing sort of a platform with some other games. So there is clearly it's more than just you had a few good days making money, and they've sustained that over a number of months, and they're trying to build out this sort of bigger platform that allows them to do things. I think to some degree that's why I must try not to be too dismissive about these sort of experiences that people are doing at the moment to make money, because it's clear that a lot of people would like to make sort of proper games, but the market's not there to make proper games. So you have to a degree, you have to do the things that people will pay you now in order to keep the company going, in order to be able to make the games you want later on, or find find the sort of experiences that are a bit more like what you want to make. So definitely a case of sort of keeping the lights on sort of thing. Is in business you have to make money, and that was again another interesting thing from the panel. It's sort of like there isn't any funding, so you literally it doesn't really matter whether you're a blockchain games company or an oil distillery or something. There are certain things you do to make money, and there are certain sort of vanity things you can do if you have loads of profit. But at the moment, all blockchain companies, games companies, need to make money. Even blockchains need to make money, and that the fact you're using this sort of interesting technology is irrelevant to the fact that every month you need to pay people salaries, and if you don't have any money, then they're going to get other jobs, so you have to sack them. Anyway, going back to the Mavens thing, the other interesting thing is particularly because we have people like Hilmar from CCP Games that we've spoken about a lot. The other side of that sort of extreme way of making games is there are still these people who have a very specific way. CCP Games is not going to make a spin the wheel gacha game. They would rather go bust than do that. So there are, going back to my favourite analogy of hills people want to die on. There are some people who are making games, and the game is is to a degree the quality of the game and the substance of the game is what they die on. And obviously those people are people like obviously CCP Games have raised $40 million plus, I suppose, now to make Eve Frontier, and it's a game that they're making very slowly, and it's open development, and every few months the universe gets wiped and they start again, and so there are a few like that. There's MapleStory. That's some frustration. Yeah, MapleStory Universe is not quite as fully on chain and experimental as that, but they clearly, moving in that direction, and they announced last week, I think, that they're gonna they have their own blockchain, but they're gonna allow other blockchains to sort of interact with that, and they want to build out UGC sort of systems, and there are other similar games that things that are moving to things that are more fully on chain, allow more interaction from people without asking permission, and that's clearly one of the unique things about permissionless blockchains, is that anyone can come in and build, and that's clearly what we've seen from the experience of looking at Ethereum over the last whatever it is 10 years, not quite 10 years. A whole bunch of rubbish gets built, but there's a purity there of the 1% that is you probably couldn't get that if you weren't just allowing people. If you didn't allow whatever is what the guy who created Uniswap just to sort of mess around for a year and make Uniswap the first sort of AMM on Ethereum that just, it wasn't the first one actually, but one that really sort of just everyone's like, oh yes, that's the one, and that sort of was the first big DeFi, first big DeFi project really to take off anyway. Something to waffle. But I do think when we come to blockchain games, at the moment we're in this situation where there are these people just, what can we do to make money? End up with these very sort of discrete sort of gambling products, effectively, and then you still have these people who sort of are the true believers. There's many fewer of them now, but there weren't actually that many of them, because those projects are really hard to do, and they do take a lot of time. So and I guess that's sort of where my interest sort of always is. On that side of things, so that's become more and more my interest, I suppose.
Yeah. Let's talk about one of those projects, Wildcard, which launched season 0. I think they call it early access on Steam. Yeah. So not a Web3 game, but clearly with a lot of Web3 surrounding it. I suppose that's the best way of explaining it. So talk us through a little bit. Well, I mean, we have been discussing Wildcard in the past, but yeah.
So I mean, that's the other sort of way of doing it, where it's very hard. It's very hard to have blockchain in a game where you have real value in the game, and that's sort of been the big problem that blockchain games has really dealt with. They've never been able to make a fun game if there's real money in there and expectations about investment. So one way of doing that is just make a Web2 game, make a really good Web2 game, which is what Wildcard have done. And obviously they have Web3 stuff in the sort of surrounding. Effectively, they have a streaming platform around that called Thousands, and that's where all the blockchain, also where the tokens are, and there's some other sort of stuff in there as well. But that's sort of where all the degen stuff can happen in, and it doesn't impact the gameplay at all. So Wildcard is like a lot of these sort of games now these days, a bit of a sort of mashup, sort of genre wise. So it is a sort of a MOBA to some degree. It is a card, is a deck building game as well. So it's a 2v2 game. So you're basically, and it's a sort of a sports game. So you basically two players, there's 2 teams, 2 players in each team. And then there's it started off, it's like sort of a soccer sort of mentality. We have to score goals. So there's an area at each end of the arena. It's protected by a big sort of boss character. You have to defeat that boss character, and then like a glowing orb appears, and then you have to attack the glowing orb, and it takes a certain period of time, a certain number of hits, sort of thing. And then if you do that, you get a goal. It's first to 3, and you're running around as a sort of commander character, and then there's mana going on all the time, and then you can spawn minion creatures onto this arena, and they obviously go for, they're sort of pre-programmed also sort of battle sort of mode, and they go off and they do their what they have to do. So really polished PC game. I've not played a ton of it. I played a bit of it yesterday. It just is really smooth. I mean, I'll never be very good at it. It has some of the problems of all trading card games, where you sort of start off and you have all these cards, you have no idea really what the best ones are, and that's clearly the thing you need to know. Not what the best cards are equally, but when to play certain cards at the same time, because they obviously have synergetic sort of qualities. If you put in a massive sort of attack card in with a healing card that's healing it all the time, all right. But really polished. It's into early access, so that can be a little bit like anyone. I think anyone can play it. I'm pretty sure. But it's not properly out yet. But quite when it's properly out, we don't know. but it'll be interesting to see that because so it's not a blockchain game, but it's a very, very polished game. It's cost them $50 million. They really know what they're doing. It's I don't think anyone who likes those sort of games they might dislike it for some particular reason. Like they might not like the timings of stuff or something, specific things, but super well polished. Works, pretty much. I've not got a really good gaming PC, not a gaming PC even, but it worked sort of seamlessly on that. So yeah, that's interesting success. It's free to play, so you can buy items in there using just credit card and stuff. There's no crypto in there, and then we'll sort of see, I guess, later on how the community builds around this sort of esports community with this sort of token, and they've got some clever ideas around sort of some of the franchise type stuff, and people potentially can own stadiums and things like that as well.
Yeah. No, it will be interesting to see from how Web2 players are gonna receive it, and what sort of, if they get a kind of Web2 community build up and then a separate Web3 community built around it, or that's interesting to follow.
And it is interesting because obviously the real sort of progressive types will go, this is a blockchain game. Sort of true to some degree, but basically you could just play the game in Steam, and you wouldn't interact with any of that esports stuff. You have to literally go to the Thousands app.
And even that, you mentioned the token, the wild WC token.
WC,
which is very controlled. It's got this kind of app tokens type standard where they've set up limits about how you can extract, and so it's not sort of in any way that your traditional sort of crypto botted game.
And it's all been given away, so there's no price on it. I mean, I don't know, because they did do an airdrop on it, but it was all locked into wallets, so no one could sort of trade it. It wasn't. And it's not supposed to be. I mean, obviously it's used for financial value, but there's no sort of. As soon as you have that, obviously it will have a price at some point, and the price will go up or down, probably down. So people will have to live with that. But because it wasn't sold at like, we're selling this for $1, so if it's 10 cents, doesn't matter. To that point of view, these, as you say, it's app token like these transactional tokens that are basically sort of designed to go down in value, but the whole point is you're not supposed to hold on to them. If you have some, you're sort of like supposed to spend it now. You're in a high inflation. You're in Zimbabwe, and someone's just given you $1 billion Zimbabwe dollars. No one keeps that. No, let's spend it as quickly as possible. Go and buy some sugar or something. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, good. Right then, finally, Raven.
Isn't that funny?
Knowing you and how you can set off on sidetracks, talking about Zimbabwean sugar production. Anyway, RavenIdle, that's how you say it, isn't it? Coming out, the Raven Quest game has launched season 0. Is it season 1? Season 1 rewards.
Season 1 now. Yeah.
It
launched a while ago. I just wanted to have a quick sort of mention of it. So season 1 launched 2 weeks ago. And this is an idle game, so sort of very just placed in the background. It's actually quite, for an idle game, it's quite complex. Obviously, as you say, it's based in the universe of Raven Quest, which is a PC MMORPG, which is a much more blockchain integrated game with land and its own quest token and packs of sort of cards and stuff. And that sort of worked. That game's been nichely popular, I would say. At the moment, it's down to a few thousand daily active unique wallets, although it's not a fully on-chain game, so there's obviously more people playing it than that. Developers sort of experience of making these games as Web2 games, and they've done this idle version. So it's all this sort of it's all the sort of assets and resources in the main quest game, but just in a sort of time-based idle thing. So it's actually quite deep. There's a whole kind of character sort of development tree, which is I think the same as in the main game. So you're sort of choosing sort of class and subclasses and unlocking spells, and you have stats like you get a certain number of skill points, dexterity, and intelligence, and so adding these up. So a certain amount of customization. But quite a very heavy sort of crafting game, and it's sort of you basically certainly my sort of viewpoint, I need better armor, so I need to get like the next helmet up, and so to get the next helmet I need to look at the ingredients to craft that helmet, and I need to go and get some hide, and to get hide I have to go and fight some toads or something, and you go through all that. So you never have enough time, You can sort of buy your way in. It's actually pretty Web 2, to be honest. At the moment, as far as I can see, the Web 3 bit comes really from the rewards. So they're giving away the quest token and giving away NFTs and stuff as part of their prize pool. But I just think the interesting thing, going back to sort of what we started out with, is, as I say, Raven's Quest is. I played it for a few hours and sort of got a bit stuck on it, and it's had maybe tens of thousands of people who played that game because it's good, it's well put together. It's sort of 7 out of 10 or something, I expect, but it's not. It's really hard to get people to download a PC game and play that. Spend you have to put the hours into an MMORPG. With the idle game. Has that, they have like a little ticker, I assume it's correct, has like over 130,000 sort of players. I don't know if that's lifetime or that's now, but obviously with those idle games, it's, you sort of, it's going, as we do this podcast, it's playing in the background. I can't even remember what it's doing at the moment. It's like killing toads or something. Get me some hides, So you play it in a very dispassionate way. It's designed for you to do it for like 5 minutes a day but if you could spend a couple of hours on it a day, like, I need 7 hides. So once I've got my 7 hides, I need to go back to the crafting thing. And then what else do I need? I need some cotton. So then I have to go to there's a farm. You can grow cotton trees and all these things are happening at the same time. So you're sort of trying to work this stuff out. There's a little sort of economic model in there. You can put together trade packs and sell them for stuff. There's obviously all the sort of economy and stuff. So it just goes back to, I guess, all games companies in general, but particularly blockchain games companies, they're sort of looking to how can we probably have like a big idea of what we want to do, but that's probably not very accessible to people, particularly if it has a lot of blockchain in it, or ask them to go through wallets and stuff. Whereas Raven's Quest, I did probably signed in with my email, which is actually no. So it's actually you can connect your 2 accounts, but actually they're separate accounts even. So they're just thinking about how can we make this more accessible, and hopefully over time, I guess they think that the Raven's idle people who really get into that will then maybe get into the game. So you're sort of slowly building that up. I think it just plays back into people thinking about what's the experience we want to make as developers, because if no one wants to work on a game just to make money or in the hope of making money if they don't actually care about the experience, particularly in blockchain. But equally you have to make it accessible. So what bits of it do you sort of leave out, or how can you get people interested in your world without giving them the full fat experience? How can you sort of Diet Coke them into it or something like that? So I think it's interesting from that point of view.
Sort of the trend that's growing throughout this year, I would say, if it's tying back to the sort of trends in 2025, is that this sort of companion games that sort of enhance your foundational game. You got 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 in the future, sort of different mini games almost that ties back into your main meta game sort of thing.
I think Pixels are doing a
Pixel Block Lords.
Pixel's doing a pet game, aren't they? Block Lords did one. Yeah. And obviously, they all have strengths and weaknesses. The problem is they're making it more accessible means you get more people in, but actually, if you make it too accessible, then you get loads of people in, and you can never convert any of them. So all these things are sort of balancing acts. There's skill in all these sort of things about getting it exactly right. But equally, then EVE Online, CCP go no, it's full fat or nothing. That's sort of their DNA for the last 25 years. Is you play this super hard game or we don't want you sort of thing. So everyone sort of picks their battles on that, and I think blockchain just makes it a lot harder because it makes the accessibility stuff, which is, as we know, 10 times harder on as soon as blockchain is involved. But some people get that to work in terms of the long-term monetization, but people, these games will last for decades. Or like Hilmar sort of says, I guess semi-jokingly, that the main EVE game, but also EVE Frontier, are designed to be to live beyond his life. And maybe some games are probably getting to that stage already. Not blockchain games, but blockchain just gives you that extra hardness, that long-term hardness when you have that economy that is based in real-term values. Sort of getting to that point. This is just as proven to be sort of insurmountable at this stage.
Yeah. And it just shows the creativity as well. When there is kind of challenges and hurdles, there's been plenty of 2024, 2025, is that out of that comes these new models, sort of experimental solutions. Some of it will stick, some of it won't. But these sort of companion apps are sort of part of that, I think, in finding solutions that don't necessarily require more funding, but it just requires a bit of creativity and thinking.
Yeah.
New thinking. Right, on that note, stop waffling and finish off, and we shall see you all back next week. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.